Hello and welcome to this week's Ruby Shoes podcast, delivering the very best local entertainment news across East Anglia each and every week. This week we've been out and about on Sunday at a rather damp but still great Ipswich Music Day. Earlier in the week we were enjoying theatre in stunning Suffolk Woodland, and I've been chatting only yesterday to a political comedian who will be starring in a play about criminals which is coming to Sudbury on Wednesday this week, that's the 9th of July. Plus, as always, a roundup of some of the region's top theatre shows you won't want to miss. Meet recovering addict Frankie, who's going to be played by Mark Thomas, in the years following the Strangeways prison riot of 1991, as he enters the brave new world of a liberal prison experiment. Join legendary political comedian Mark Thomas and writer Ed Edwards as they test ideas for their new tale of freedom, revolution and messy love. It's all happening this Wednesday. It's at the Key Theatre in Sudbury. And to find out more, I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Thomas now. Mark, thanks for joining us for the Ruby Shoes podcast. Tell us, what was the inspiration, first of all?
Well, I suppose you'll have to ask Ed, the writer, about that. But I mean, I guess the inspiration for him was the fact that he did 3.5 years for importing cannabis and then got clean. Well, he got clean after he was clean while he was importing, which was one of the stupid things about addiction. And so it's very much based on his experience. And it's a great old story. It's a rollicking ride, and people have in previous interviews have said, what do you want people to feel when they leave, after seeing the show? What do you think, what do you want people to take away with it? I would say that I don't want them to feel like they've seen a bit of theatre. I want them to feel like they've been sort of like set to emotionally and engaged in this sort of like amazing story. And Ed writes in that. Ed is just a great writer. He writes in the active all the time. So there's not a man that looks old. There's boom, old man. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I remember. No, you don't. I am. And it's kind of, do you know what I mean? So it's really exciting.
Sounds quite fast paced.
It is. It is incredibly fast paced, and it's based on a lot of the characters and a few that he knew in jail and a few others that he met outside. So it's yeah. I mean, there's not a slow moment.
Excellent. So how did you and Ed get together to actually produce this together so that you could perform the addict Frankie?
Well, I mean, this is the second show I've done with Ed. The first one, England and Son. Again, that was about addiction. But it's really interesting because I met Ed coming out of one of his previous shows. I was walking out of one of his previous shows and I said to my partner, that was one of the best things I've seen in years. That's just amazing. And this bloke behind me just went, I wrote that. And that's how we met. And so we kind of hooked up and started talking, and we would often meet each other. We would, if I was touring, Ed would kind of come and see the show, and then we'd go out and natter. And we wanted to work together for ages. What we would do when we first started was Ed would he'd write stuff that was sort of based upon my dad and his dad. He would get me to read it and read it and read it. He'd give me a copy and then take it away. They'd give me a copy and give it, and then he'd go, right, improvise the story. So I'd go, oh, right.
Wow.
And I'd improvise the story from what I'd remembered, but I'd add stuff in.
Yeah.
And I'd leave stuff out, and Ed would go, all right, I'll keep that bit. I'll put that bit in. I'll leave that bit out. Do you know what I mean? And that's how we worked on the first one. And then he just sort of went away and finished it. And suddenly it was like, oh,
and that was this one. Is there improvisation still in this one? Is this still very much a work in progress, would you say?
Well, Ed always gives, all the time he writes stuff and tells you, oh, put this in, put that in. I was going to go, I was performing at the Roundabout 2 years ago. I was literally about to go on stage when Ed came and just went, I think this will work better if you do this line. I'm going, Ed, I'm about to go on. Literally, I'm waiting for the line.
Don't do that to me now.
And he was going, no, this would work better. Put this line in. And he came up to me afterwards and said, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But it did work because I'd managed to put it in and he was right. And So we have a very intense relationship.
It sounds quite tense. It sounds quite terrifying, actually. From an actor's point of view, I think the last thing you need is someone trying to change the script as you're about to step onto the stage.
Well, I'm not a traditional actor. Do you know what I mean? I started out as a comic and always have been a comic and storyteller. So I'm very happy with sort of like putting new lines in and trying stuff out and improvising. In fact, Ed tells me off now. He goes, "You have to stick to the script."
I think it's a really interesting connection that you have between the two of you, and how amazing that the two of you did make that connection in such a bizarre way. Obviously, the hope is that this is going to do brilliantly and go on tour, I imagine. You're at the Key this Wednesday, as I say, which will be wonderful, and we'll love to look to see you there. What's your hopes for it for the future?
I want to become fabulously wealthy.
Yeah, I realise personally, but what about this particular?
That's why I'm in theatre. When you say what are your hopes for it, I mean, we're going to tour it. We've got a tour lined up. I just want to make it exciting so people remember it. This to be is totally brilliant. I want people to come up. That's what I want more than anything else. What I want is the work to be the best that it can be. I just want to make stuff that's really, really outstanding and people remember.
Yeah. And are you working on something else together after this?
Well, we have just started the discussion about the third one. I subtly mentioned, we're now on two, you have to do a trilogy.
Yeah.
And so we've started looking at the next one.
Yeah. Brilliant. He's not going to let you retire anytime soon anyway, that's for sure.
I love working with him. We want to hang out and we want to talk ideas and we want to chat. And, we do gigs in prisons together and we do workshops with addicts in recovery and all that kind of stuff. Exciting and fulfilling, and it's real.
Yeah. And have you actually performed this at a prison? And if so, how has it gone down? I would imagine brilliantly.
We haven't performed this one at a prison because it's still sort of work in progress. The last one we performed up in Greenock, which is west of Glasgow, and it was great because they have to give you a feedback. And it was kind of like, mate, if these were reviews, we would be, it's just amazing. And the connection you make with people, it's very interesting. One bloke said, this is my first time on the education block because this is what it's like all the time because it's the first time I'm being treated like an adult in prison. And that's really interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting that actually the thing about prison that people sort of forget is people get out and they become part of your community.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's brilliant. Not only are you going to be entertaining us, but actually you're using this piece of work to help those people with their recovery. Because you say it's not just about locking people up, it's about, enabling them to get back into society and lead, hopefully a law-abiding and fulfilling life. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Mark. Good luck for Wednesday. I'm so glad that you're coming to the Key Theatre. It's a wonderful theatre. Have you been there before?
I have. I think it's as quirky as hell. I love it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely great. I really like the people who run the place have got this really good ethos and it punches above its weight.
Yeah, very much so. Good description, Mark. Thank you for talking to us today for the Ruby Shoes podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Have a good day.
And if you'd like to get tickets to see Mark Thomas in Ordinary Decent Criminals, go to the Key Theatre in Sudbury's website. That's keysudbury.com. It's on this Wednesday, the 9th of July from 7:30 p.m. At the end of last week, we took ourselves off to enjoy some theatre in the great outdoors at Thorington's Amphitheatre. We arrived early so we could enjoy a nice picnic before the performance. Then we took our seats, quite literally, take my advice, take a seat pad with you for added comfort, along with producer Ruby, our four-legged mini schnauzer, as the theatre, which is a glorious amphitheatre in Woodland, also welcomes dogs on leads, which is brilliant. So we were there to see Ostentatious, performed by an all-star cast who improvised a hilarious new Jane Austen novel inspired entirely by a title from the audience on the night. So the story of Coathanger Abbey and the tale of haberdashery folk who lived there unfolded hilariously in front of us by Austin Improv.
For those of you who don't know, this show is entirely improvised, which means we have no idea what's going to happen. We have no pre-prepared characters, lines of dialogue, storylines, anything like that. All we know is that we're going to be telling a story in the style of Jane Austen, inspired by one of your title suggestions, so please have them at the ready to call out in just a moment. But first, as a little treat for this very magnificent venue, we have a special guest here to talk a little bit about Jane and her work. So please give another warm welcome to esteemed Jane Austen scholar, Professor Sam Patham.
Well, we're on our way back now from the Thorrington Theatre, Amphitheatre. One of the things I love about it is it's a theatre in the middle of a forest. And I mean, what's not to love? It was a beautiful evening. We've just left and there was a pink sky. It was just lovely. Just seeing the sunset over the theatre is just magical, really. You could have seen a terrible show and still had a brilliant night. We didn't see a terrible show. We saw Ostentatious, which was really, really clever. Completely improvised show, wasn't it?
It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, the whole experience, like so many other people, taking a picnic and before the show, sitting and having a picnic, having our doggy sat next to us all the way through the show.
What's not to like? Going to see the theatre show and having your own dog in between you, and she was completely chilled out and loving the whole thing.
And isn't the theatre magnificent?
It really is.
Whole amphitheatre outside, but in the forest.
Beautiful setting.
Nice stage lighting. I was surprised at how good a quality all the sound system and everything was. So
completely top notch, and the lighting, everything.
It's just a magnificent. And of course, the show itself, improvisation. How do you do that? It even had a good story.
Exactly. So the whole point of it was that they got an audience member to pick the title of a spurious Jane Austen novel, and there were 3 suggestions on the night, and they picked one of them, and it was just hilarious. And it was all about haberdashery, and you actually made a good point, as you said, I'd love to have gone last night when they were also at Thorrington Theatre to see what was suggested last night and how very different the performance would have been, because it was just so clever. It was really funny. Straight away they come up with the title and the actors just walk out and start performing this show about, a haberdashery shop, a father and son, and then there was an abbey. Was the abbey a place or a church or a home? It was, the whole thing was just brilliant, wasn't it?
It was tremendously well done, and it's such a family thing there as well. We were not the only people with a dog. There were lots of people with children.
It was full. It was completely packed. The whole theatre. There was not a spare seat anywhere.
And the people behind us, although we didn't buy any wine, the people behind us were saying about how good the wine selection was and what they were buying. We had a wonderful ice cream.
Who doesn't love a bar or an ice cream stall in the middle of the forest? It was lovely. Pistachio ice cream was just a highlight, wasn't it?
It was brilliant.
Amazing. Really good night. If you're going to go, make sure you take your seat pad with you, because you're going to be sitting on wooden seats. But we did remember this year, and it was very comfortable, and just loved it. Thank you so much, Thorrington Theatre. There's plenty more great shows to enjoy this summer at Thorrington Theatre. Next up is Friday the 18th of July. Luke Wright offering pub grub and fun and filthy poems from someone who knows what they're doing. After selling out shows across the country with joy, Luke Wright is back conjuring up a world of Tuesday lunchtimes and small-town boozers in poems that burst with inventive language. For details of all the brilliant performances on offer in July and August, check out thoringtontheatre.co.uk. Next week on the Ruby Shoes podcast, we hear from Pop Chorus, who have a fabulous fundraising afternoon of fun and cake planned for later this year. Plus, Michael Ball and Alfie Boe are coming to Newmarket Nights next month, and I've been chatting with Michael about all things musical, plus his favourite guilty pleasure.
What's on across Suffolk with Stephanie McIntyre. Sponsored by Ruby Shoes Podcast, your weekly entertainment news podcast. Available from your smart speaker, Apple, Spotify, or you just follow Ruby Shoes Podcast on Facebook and click on the weekly podcast link to listen.
There's a host of great shows on offer across Suffolk's magnificent theatres, and here's just a selection to tempt you. Friday the 18th of July at the Spa Pavilion Theatre in Felixstowe from 7:30pm. Are you ready to step into a world of timeless humour, uproarious laughter and wit? Look no further. Mike Osmond, the brilliant comedian and close friend of the legendary Jethro, invites you to an extraordinary tribute show that will transport you back to the golden era of comedy. For tickets and information, go to spapavilion.uk. Also on Friday the 18th, this time at the Haverhill Arts Centre. Since his first UK comedy gig 21 years ago, Georgia-born Reginald D. Hunter's searingly honest observations both on stage and on TV and radio have garnered him a cross-generational fan base. During that time, he's become one of the comedy industry's best-known performers for his distinctive take on the most diverse range of subjects. Sometimes controversial, always hilarious, the only place to experience Reg at his best is the live stage. Go to haverhillartcentre.co.uk. The Masters of Swing will be at the Seagull Theatre in Lowestoft also on Friday the 18th of July. Catch them if you can at 7:30pm at the Seagull Theatre in Lowestoft. For your tickets, go to theseagull.co.uk. At Thorrington Outdoor Theatre on Saturday the 19th of July, Starboard Home, an evening of sea shanties and songs presented by the Silver Darlings. To find out about this show and all of the outdoor theatre performances this summer, go to thorringtontheatre.co.uk. And finally, a reminder that Southwold and Aldeburgh Summer Season of Theatre by the Sea opens on Monday the 21st of July and runs right through until Saturday the 30th of August. They open in Aldeburgh on Monday the 21st, See How They Run by Philip King, the ultimate VE Day farce. And don't forget, you can always get in touch with us via our Facebook page. We're at Ruby Shoes Podcast. We always love to hear about your forthcoming plays, comedy nights, your Amdram groups, or any kind of show, festival or event in East Anglia. And we can let everybody else know about it too. You can listen again to the Ruby Shoes Podcast via Apple, Spotify, or your favourite podcast host. And you can find our podcast links on our Facebook page and follow us there too, of course. And you can also listen to Ruby Shoes now every week on YouTube. Yep, just type in Ruby Shoes Podcast and there will be, and you can see all our past episodes as well. Make sure you have a great week. I'm Steph McIntyre and we really appreciate you listening to the Ruby Shoes Podcast, celebrating all the brilliant things we have when it comes to live theatre and entertainment.